My science teacher just got our high school closed indefinitely. The alarm system erupted just as I opened the lab door. Sprinklers blasted from the ceiling, green smoke curling out from under the counters in thick ribbons. Mr. Brennan stood at the center table shouting something I couldn't hear over the shrieking alarm. He waved his arms at me, then lunged toward a beaker that was glowing like a neon sign. I froze in the doorway. The air shimmered around him, distorting his face like I was looking through water. He grabbed his lab coat off the back of a chair and threw it over the beaker, smothering whatever was inside. The glow pulsed brighter for a second, then dimmed. Green smoke billowed out from under the fabric. "Get out!" he screamed, finally loud enough for me to hear. "Now!" I stumbled backward into the hall, coughing. My eyes burned. The smoke followed me out, spreading across the ceiling tiles like spilled paint. Other students were already running toward the exits, some of them laughing because they thought it was a drill. I knew it wasn't. Mr. Brennan staggered out of the lab, his face red and slick with sweat. He slammed the door shut behind him and leaned against it, breathing hard. The sprinklers kept going. Water poured down the hallway, soaking the carpet and pooling around our shoes. "What was that?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just stared at the door like something might burst through it. The fire alarm cut off suddenly, replaced by the lockdown siren. 3 short blasts, then a long wail. The intercom crackled to life. "All students and staff remain in place. Do not exit the building. This is not a drill." Mr. Brennan pushed off the door and grabbed my shoulder. "You need to go to the gym, right now. What happened in there? Just go." He shoved me toward the main hallway. I looked back once and saw him standing in the middle of the water, staring at the lab door like he was waiting for something to explode. By the time I reached the gym, half the school was already packed inside. Teachers were doing head counts, trying to keep everyone calm. I sat down on the bleachers next to my friend Corey, who was scrolling through his phone. "Did you see the smoke?" he asked. "I was in the lab." His eyes went wide. "No way, what was it?" "I don't know, something Mr. Brennan was working on." "Dude, people are saying it's a chemical spill, like hazmat level bad." I looked toward the gym doors. Through the narrow windows, I could see flashing red and blue lights outside. Fire trucks, police cars, an ambulance. "Where's Mr. Brennan?" Corey asked. I didn't know. I hadn't seen him come into the gym. The principal walked to the center of the floor with a megaphone. Her voice echoed off the walls. "Everyone stay seated. Emergency services are on site. We're working to assess the situation. No one leaves until we get the all clear." Someone in the back shouted, "What happened?" She didn't answer. She just repeated the same thing about staying seated. I pulled out my phone and opened the group chat. Messages were already flooding in. Someone said they saw hazmat suits. Someone else said the entire science wing was sealed off. Another person posted a blurry photo of Mr. Brennan being led outside by 2 firefighters in full gear. Corey leaned over to look at my screen. "Is that him?" I zoomed in. It was. His face was pale, his shirt soaked through. He wasn't fighting them, but he wasn't walking on his own either. They were holding him up. "What did he do?" Corey whispered. I didn't have an answer, but I kept thinking about the way the air shimmered around that beaker, and the way he looked at the door like he was afraid of what he'd left behind. The gym doors stayed locked for another 20 minutes. Teachers kept circling the bleachers, telling everyone to stay calm, but their voices were tight and clipped. I watched the principal pace back and forth near the entrance, her phone pressed to her ear. Every few seconds, she'd glance toward the windows, then turn away like she didn't want to see what was happening outside. Corey nudged me. "Check this out." He held up his phone. Someone had posted a video to the school's Instagram page. Shaky footage of the hallway outside the science wing, green smoke pouring out from under the lab door. The caption read, "WTF is happening?" The comments were already piling up. Someone said they heard an explosion. Someone else said a student had mixed the wrong chemicals. Another person claimed it was a gas leak. "None of that's true," I said. "Then what is?" I didn't answer. I kept thinking about the way Mr. Brennan had looked at that beaker, like he was afraid of it and proud of it at the same time. The gym doors finally opened. A firefighter in full gear stepped inside, his face hidden behind a mask. The principal walked over to him and they talked in low voices for a minute. Then she turned back to us with the megaphone. "We're going to begin evacuating the building in groups. When your name is called, proceed directly to the parking lot. Do not stop to collect your belongings. Do not go back inside for any reason." A wave of murmurs rolled through the gym. Someone near the back started crying. The firefighter said something else to the principal, and she nodded. "Is anyone experiencing difficulty breathing, nausea, or dizziness?" she asked. No one raised their hand. "If you develop any symptoms, notify a staff member immediately." They started calling names. My group wasn't until the third wave. By the time we filed out into the parking lot, the entire front of the school was surrounded by emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, police cars, and 2 white vans with hazmat printed on the sides in bold letters. I scanned the crowd for Mr. Brennan. I didn't see him. Corey grabbed my arm. "Over there!" He pointed toward the far end of the parking lot, where a cluster of firefighters stood around someone sitting on the back of an ambulance. I recognized the shape of Mr. Brennan's shoulders, the way he hunched forward with his elbows on his knees. He was still wearing his lab coat, but it was soaked through and streaked with something dark. A paramedic was trying to put an oxygen mask on him. He kept pushing it away. "I need to go back in," he said. His voice carried across the parking lot, loud and desperate. I didn't finish the neutralization sequence. The paramedic said something I couldn't hear. Mr. Brennan shook his head. "You don't understand. If the reaction destabilizes, the whole wing could—" A firefighter stepped in front of him, blocking my view. When he moved again, Mr. Brennan was slumped forward, the mask finally over his face. "What's a neutralization sequence?" Corey asked. "It's what you do to stop a chemical reaction," I said. "You add something to balance it out so it doesn't keep going." "So he didn't finish?" I didn't know. But the way he'd looked at that beaker before he threw his coat over it, the way the glow had pulsed brighter before it dimmed, it didn't feel finished. More students started gathering gathering near the ambulance, trying to get a better look. Teachers shouted at them to stay back. Someone's mom showed up and started yelling at the principal, demanding to know what had happened. The principal just kept repeating that they were still assessing the situation. A news van pulled into the parking lot, then another. Within minutes, reporters were setting up cameras near the school entrance, their voices overlapping as they shouted questions at anyone who would listen. Was anyone injured? Do you know what caused the smoke? Is this a terrorist attack? One of them shoved a microphone in front of a sophomore girl who was crying. She shook her head and turned away, but the camera kept rolling. I felt sick. Corey's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then showed it to me. The group chat was exploding. Someone said they'd heard Mr. Brennan had been arrested. Someone else said he'd been trying to make a bomb. Another person claimed he'd been running an illegal drug lab in the science wing. None of that's true, I said again. Then what is? I opened my mouth, but I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell someone that the teacher who used to make liquid nitrogen ice cream and set magnesium strips on fire just to make us laugh had been locked in the lab every night for weeks, chasing something he found on the internet? How do you explain that the same person who taught us to question everything had stopped questioning whether he should? A hazmat crew emerged from the school entrance carrying sealed containers. They loaded them into the back of one of the white vans, moving carefully like they were handling explosives. Another crew followed, this one carrying what looked like air quality monitors. The principal's voice crackled over a portable speaker. All students are dismissed for the remainder of the day. Parents have been notified. Please proceed to the designated pickup area. No one moved. Now please! Teachers started herding us toward the far end of the parking lot, away from the school. I looked back one more time and saw Mr. Brennan still sitting on the ambulance, the oxygen mask fogging up with every breath. A police officer was standing next to him now, writing something in a notebook. Corey grabbed my shoulder. Dude, we have to go! I followed him toward the pickup area, but I couldn't stop looking back. The green smoke had stopped pouring out of the building, but I could still smell it in the air, sharp and metallic, like burnt copper mixed with something sweet. My mom's car pulled up to the curb. She rolled down the window, her face pale. Get in, she said. Now! I climbed into the passenger seat. She didn't say anything else, she just drove. The school sent an email that night. My mom read it out loud while I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched dinner. Due to an ongoing investigation into a chemical incident, classes are canceled through Friday. The district is working with environmental safety experts to ensure the building is safe for occupancy. Further updates will be provided as information becomes available. She set her phone down. What happened in that lab? I don't know. You were there, you saw something. I pushed my plate away. I saw smoke, that's it. She didn't believe me. I could tell by the way she kept looking at me, waiting for me to say more, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't understand what I'd seen. The group chat didn't stop all night. People kept posting theories, screenshots, links to news articles that didn't have any real information. Someone found Mr. Brennan's faculty page on the school website and noticed it had been taken down. Someone else said their parent worked for the fire department and heard the hazmat team had to seal off the entire science wing because the air quality readings were off the charts. Corey texted me directly. You think he's in jail? I don't know. My dad said if someone causes a hazmat situation, they can get charged with reckless endangerment, like criminal charges. I didn't respond. I turned my phone face down and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that beaker glowing, the air shimmering around it like heat rising off asphalt. The next morning, I rode my bike to school. The parking lot was empty except for a few district vehicles and another hazmat van. Yellow caution tape stretched across the main entrance. I circled around to the back of the building, where the science wing faced the football field. The windows were covered with plastic sheeting, taped from the inside. I could see the outline of the lab through the translucent material, but everything inside was dark. I leaned my bike against the fence and walked closer. The window to Mr. Brennan's classroom was at ground level. I crouched down and peered through the gap between the plastic and the frame. The room was gutted. The lab tables were gone. The shelves that used to hold beakers and flasks and jars of chemicals were empty. Even the periodic table poster he'd hung above the whiteboard was missing. The door to the supply closet stood open. I could see scorch marks on the walls inside, black streaks that hadn't been there before. Hey! I spun around. A security guard was walking toward me from the parking lot, one hand on his radio. You can't be here, he said. School's closed. I just wanted to see. Doesn't matter, you need to leave. I grabbed my bike and pedaled away before he could ask my name. When I looked back, he was still standing there, watching me. I tried emailing Mr. Brennan that afternoon. I didn't know what to say, so I kept it simple. Are you okay? What happened? The email bounced back an hour later. Address not found. I checked the school directory. His name was gone. Not just his email, his entire profile. It was like he'd never worked there. Corey called me that night. Did you see the news? No. They're saying the school might not reopen for weeks, maybe longer. They have to do a full decontamination of the science wing, and the district doesn't have the budget for it. Where'd you hear that? My mom. She's on the PTA. She said they're talking about moving us to another building temporarily, but there's nowhere big enough to fit everyone. I didn't say anything. People are pissed, Corey continued. Like parents are threatening to sue. Someone started a petition to get Mr. Brennan's teaching license revoked. He probably already lost it. Yeah, but they want to make sure he never teaches again. Anywhere. I hung up and opened my laptop. I searched for Mr. Brennan's name, but nothing came up except old articles about the science fair he used to run every year. I tried adding chemical incident to the search. Still nothing. Then I tried searching for banned chemistry experiments and synthetic fuel reaction. The results were a mess. Forums, Reddit threads, YouTube videos with titles like "Don't try this" and "The reaction they don't want you to know about." Most of them were clickbait or conspiracy theories, but one thread caught my attention. It was on an obscure chemistry forum, the kind with a plain text layout and no moderation. The original post was from 6 months ago. Challenge: prove the Hartman-Kessler reaction works. $500 to anyone who can replicate it and post results. The replies were a mix of people calling it fake and others arguing about whether the reaction was even theoretically possible. One user kept insisting it was real, that they'd seen it done in a lab in the 70s before it got banned. I scrolled down. Near the bottom of the thread, someone had posted a blurry photo of a glowing green liquid in a beaker. The caption read, Day 12, partial success, stabilization still an issue. The username was SciGuyB. I stared at the screen. Mr. Brennan's first name was Brian. I clicked on the username. The profile was bare except for a handful of posts, all in the same thread. He'd been documenting his attempts to recreate the reaction, posting updates every few days. The last post was from 2 weeks ago. Final attempt tomorrow. If this works, I'll post the full procedure. There were no replies. I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark, my stomach twisting. He'd been trying to win a bet, a stupid online challenge with a cash prize that probably didn't even exist, and he'd destroyed everything for it. The next day, a letter arrived in the mail. It was addressed to my parents, but I opened it before they got home. Dear parent, guardian, due to elevated levels of chemical residue detected in the science wing, the district has determined that Lincoln High School will remain closed indefinitely. Students will transition to remote learning, effective immediately. Further updates will be provided as the decontamination process continues. I read it twice, then crumpled it up and threw it across the room. My phone buzzed. Another group chat message. Someone had found Mr. Brennan's address and posted it with a fire emoji. Someone else replied, let's go ask him what he was thinking. I left the chat. That night, I rode my bike past his house. It was a small ranch-style place on the edge of town, the kind with a chain-link fence and a carport instead of a garage. The lights were off. The driveway was empty. I stopped at the curb and stared at the front door. I wanted to knock. I wanted to ask him why. Why he'd risked everything. Why he'd thought proving some random person on the internet wrong was worth it. But I didn't. I just stood there until the motion sensor light on the neighbor's porch flicked on, and then I rode home. The school board held a meeting the following week. My mom dragged me along even though I didn't want to go. The auditorium was packed. Parents stood in the aisles, shouting over each other. Someone held up a sign that said, Fire Brennan. Another sign read, Our kids deserve better. The superintendent stood at the podium, trying to calm everyone down. We understand your frustration. The safety of our students is our top priority. Mr. Brennan has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. Administrative leave? Someone shouted. He should be in jail. The room erupted. The superintendent raised his hands. We are cooperating fully with local authorities. If criminal charges are warranted, they will be pursued. What about the school? Another parent yelled. When can our kids go back? We're working with environmental specialists to assess the extent of the contamination. We hope to have a timeline within the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks? My kid has finals next month! The superintendent didn't have an answer for that. He just kept repeating the same lines about safety and cooperation and doing everything they could. I stopped listening. I looked around the room and saw teachers sitting in the back rows, their faces tight and exhausted. I recognized a few of them. Ms. Alvarez, who taught English. Mr. Patel, who coached the debate team. They looked as lost as everyone else. When the meeting finally ended, my mom grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the exit. Let's go! Wait! I turned back and saw Ms. Alvarez standing near the stage talking to another teacher. I walked over before my mom could stop me. Ms. Alvarez? She looked up. Hey, you okay? Do you know where Mr. Brennan is? Her expression shifted. I can't talk about that. Please, I just need to know if he's okay. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. He's not coming back. That's all I can say. But go home. Focus on your schoolwork. This isn't your problem to solve. She walked away before I could ask anything else. The news vans didn't leave. They set up camp across the street from the school. Reporters doing stand-ups with the caution-taped entrance in the background. I watched from my bedroom window as they cycled through the same shots over and over. The chyron at the bottom of the screen reading, Teacher's Experiment Shuts Down Local High School. My phone buzzed. Corey had sent me a link to the evening news segment. I clicked it. The anchor's voice was grave and measured. A chemistry teacher's unauthorized experiment has left a local high school closed indefinitely after a hazardous chemical release sent students fleeing and required a full hazmat response. They cut to footage of the parking lot from that first day, students streaming out of the building while firefighters in protective gear moved toward the entrance. Then they showed a photo of Mr. Brennan from the school website, the one where he was smiling in his lab coat with a beaker of colored liquid in his hand. Brian Brennan, a 10-year veteran of Lincoln High School, has been placed on administrative leave. Sources say he was attempting to recreate a banned chemical reaction he found on an online forum. The screen switched to an interview with someone I didn't recognize. A woman in a blazer with chemical safety consultant printed under her name. These types of experiments are banned for a reason, she said. The compounds involved are highly unstable. Even trained professionals wouldn't attempt this without proper ventilation and safety protocols. The anchor nodded. And this was done in a high school lab? Apparently. Which makes it even more reckless. I closed the video. My hands were shaking. The next morning, the story had spread. Not just local news anymore. State outlets picked it up. Then a few national sites. I saw the headline on 3 different news apps before I even got out of bed. Teacher's rogue chemistry experiment forces school closure. High school evacuated after toxic gas release. Online challenge leads to hazmat disaster. The comment sections were brutal. People who'd never met Mr. Brennan, never sat in his classroom, calling him an idiot and a danger to society. Someone said he should be charged with attempted murder. Someone else said teachers like him were why homeschooling was the only safe option. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Corey texted me. Did you see Channel 7? They interviewed Madison. Who? Madison Reeves. She's in our grade. She said Mr. Brennan always seemed off and that she's not surprised he did something like this. I pulled up the clip. Madison stood in front of her house, her arms crossed, her expression serious. He was always doing weird experiments, she said, like stuff that seemed dangerous. I remember one time he set something on fire and the smoke alarm went off. We all thought it was funny, but looking back, it was really irresponsible. The reporter nodded sympathetically. Did you ever feel unsafe in his classroom? I mean, not at the time, but now, yeah, definitely. I turned it off. Madison had never even taken his class. She'd been in biology last year. The group chat was a mess. People were sharing the news clips, adding their own commentary. Someone said they'd always thought Mr. Brennan was weird. Someone else said they'd heard he'd been fired from his last job for the same thing. Another person claimed he'd been trying to make explosives. I typed out a response 3 times and deleted it each time. What was I supposed to say? That they were wrong? That they didn't know him? They wouldn't listen. My mom knocked on my door. You need to eat something. I'm not hungry. You haven't left your room in 2 days. I'm fine. She opened the door anyway and sat down on the edge of my bed. This isn't your fault. I didn't say it was. You're acting like it is. I didn't respond. She sighed and stood up. There's food in the kitchen when you're ready. After she left, I opened my laptop and went back to that chemistry forum. I scrolled through the thread again, reading through Mr. Brennan's posts. The timestamp showed he'd been working on the reaction for months, documenting every failed attempt, every adjustment he made to the procedure. Then I saw something I'd missed before, a reply to his last post, the one from 2 weeks ago where he said he was making a final attempt. The reply was from 3 days ago, after the incident. Told you it was possible. Congrats on the proof. Shame about the fallout. The username was the same one who'd posted the original challenge. I clicked on the profile. It was empty except for that one thread. No other posts, no history, nothing. Just the challenge and a handful of replies egging people on. I kept scrolling. Another reply, this one from 2 days ago. Sci Guy B, you still around? Post the procedure like you promised. And then at the very bottom of the thread, a new post from yesterday. The username was Sci Guy B. It worked. Full synthesis achieved. Reaction stable for 90 seconds before destabilization. Proof attached. There was a link. I clicked it, but it led to a dead page. The file had been removed. I stared at the screen. He was still posting. Even after everything, he was still trying to prove he'd done it. I copied the thread URL and sent it to Corey. Look at this. He replied a minute later. Holy cow, is that him? I think so. Dude, he's still trying to win the bet? I don't know. Maybe. That's insane. I didn't respond. I kept reading through the thread, looking for anything else he might have posted. There was one more reply from earlier that morning. Procedure won't be shared. Too dangerous. But the reaction is real. That's all that matters. Someone had replied to that. Then what was the point? Sci Guy B hadn't answered. I closed the laptop and lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. The point. What was the point of any of it? Proving he was right? Proving the reaction worked? Proving he could do something no one else had done? My phone buzzed again. Another news alert. I almost didn't open it, but the headline caught my eye. Decontamination costs could exceed $2 million, district says. I clicked through. The article quoted the superintendent saying the science wing would need to be completely gutted and rebuilt. The district's insurance wouldn't cover it because the incident was classified as intentional misconduct. They were considering a bond measure to raise the funds, but that would take months to organize. In the meantime, students would remain on remote learning, maybe through the end of the year. The comments section was worse than before. People were calling for Mr. Brennan to be sued. Someone said he should have to pay for the repairs himself. Another person said he should be in prison. I turned my phone off and shoved it under my pillow. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way he'd looked in the lab that morning, the way he'd stared at the beaker like it was the only thing in the world that mattered, the way he'd shouted at me to get out, not because he was angry, but because he was scared. I got out of bed and opened my laptop again. I went back to the forum and read through the entire thread one more time, looking for something I'd missed, some clue that would explain why he'd done it. At the very top of the thread, buried in the replies to the original challenge post, I found it. Someone had asked, why does this even matter? What's the point of proving a banned reaction works? The user who'd posted the challenge had replied, because if no one's willing to try, then we'll never know what's possible. Science isn't about playing it safe. It's about pushing boundaries. I read it 3 times. Then I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark, my chest tight. He'd believed that. He'd really believed it. And it had cost him everything. The screenshots showed up on Reddit first. Someone had pulled them from the chemistry forum and posted them with the caption, "This is what Lincoln High's teacher was doing before the hazmat incident." I saw the link in the group chat before I saw the actual post. Corey sent it with 3 fire emojis. I clicked through. The first image was a photo of a notebook page, the handwriting cramped and precise. Chemical formulas filled the margins, crossed out and rewritten. At the top of the page, someone had written Hartman-Kessler synthesis, attempt 14. The second image was a photo of the beaker, the same one I'd seen glowing in the lab. In the picture, the liquid inside was bright green, almost luminescent, and the timestamp in the corner read 11:47 p.m. the night before the incident. The third image was a screenshot of a forum post. Sci Guy B again. Stabilization achieved for 90 seconds. Reaction produces sustained exothermic output. Will attempt full synthesis tomorrow morning. The comments under the Reddit post were already in the hundreds. People were dissecting the formulas, arguing about whether the reaction was real or fake. Someone linked to an old government document from 1983 about a chemical synthesis that had been banned after a lab accident in West Germany. The document was heavily redacted, but the name was there in bold letters at the top. Hartman-Kessler reaction, classified as environmentally hazardous. I scrolled through the document. Most of it was blacked out, but a few lines were still visible. Produces volatile organometallic compounds. compounds. Uncontrolled exothermic cascade, recommended for permanent prohibition. Someone in the comments had posted a translation of a German news article from the same year. A university lab had been evacuated after a graduate student attempted the reaction. The building had to be demolished because the contamination couldn't be fully removed. I felt sick. Another comment thread was arguing about whether Mr. Brennan had known the risks. Someone said he must have because the government document was public record. Someone else said it didn't matter, that attempting it in a high school lab was criminal either way. I closed Reddit and opened the group chat. Messages were pouring in faster than I could read them. Did you see the notebook? He was literally documenting everything. How did no one notice? But where did these screenshots even come from? I typed, "Who leaked them?" No one answered. The messages kept coming. Corey called me. I let it ring twice before I picked up. "Did you see it?" he asked. "Yeah." "Dude, this is insane. He was keeping a whole journal, like a lab notebook." "I know. And the reaction he was trying to do? It's been banned since the 80s. The government shut it down because it was too dangerous." I saw, so he knew. He had to have known. I didn't say anything. "Are you still there?" "Yeah." "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I just don't get why someone would leak this now." "Does it matter? People deserve to know what he was doing." I hung up. The next morning, the news picked up the story. The same screenshots were plastered across every local outlet. One station brought in a chemistry professor to explain what the Hartman-Kessler reaction was. He stood in front of a whiteboard covered in formulas, pointing at different compounds. "This reaction was banned because it's inherently unstable," he said. "Even under controlled conditions, the byproducts are toxic and persistent. Attempting this in a school lab, with inadequate ventilation and no safety oversight, is unconscionable." The anchor asked, "Could this have caused permanent damage to the building?" "Absolutely. Depending on how far the reaction progressed, the contamination could be embedded in the walls, the ventilation system, even the soil around the building." My mom turned off the TV. "You're not watching this anymore. I need to know what happened." "You know what happened. He made a terrible decision and now everyone's paying for it. But why did he do it?" She didn't have an answer. I went back to the forum. The thread had exploded overnight. Hundreds of new replies, most of them from people who'd never posted before. Some were calling Mr. Brennan a hero for proving the reaction worked. Others were calling him reckless and stupid. A few were arguing about whether the leaked screenshots were even real. Then I saw a new post from the user who'd started the challenge, the one who'd offered $500. "Looks like Sci Guy B delivered. Respect for following through. Shame about the consequences, but that's the risk you take when you push boundaries." Someone replied, "You're the reason this happened. You egged him on." The original poster responded, "I didn't force him to do anything. He made his own choices." Another reply, "You offered money. That's coercion. It's a challenge. If he couldn't handle the heat, he shouldn't have played." I stared at the screen. The person who'd started all of this was still here, still posting, acting like none of it mattered. I clicked on their profile again. Still nothing except that one thread. No history, no other posts. Just the challenge and the replies. I tried searching for the username on other sites. Nothing came up. It was like they'd created the account just to post that challenge and then disappeared. Except they hadn't disappeared. They were still here watching. The district held another meeting. This time they didn't invite parents. It was just the school board, the superintendent, and a team of lawyers. But someone leaked the minutes afterward. The decontamination estimate had gone up. $3 million now. The insurance company had officially denied the claim, citing willful misconduct. The district was exploring legal action against Mr. Brennan to recover the costs. One board member had suggested shutting down the school permanently and redistributing students to other buildings in the district. Another had argued that would set a dangerous precedent. The vote was tabled until the next meeting. I read through the leaked minutes twice. At the very end, there was a note about evidence collected from the lab. The investigators had found a locked notebook in Mr. Brennan's desk. The contents matched the screenshots that had been posted online. Someone on the board had asked how the screenshots had gotten out if the notebook was in police custody. No one had an answer. I went back to Reddit. The post with the screenshots had been up for 3 days now, and it had over 2,000 comments. I scrolled through them looking for anything that might explain where they'd come from. Then I found it. A comment buried halfway down the page. "These came from the forum. Someone downloaded them before the mods deleted the thread." I clicked on the username. The account was 2 days old. No other posts, no comment history except that one line. I went back to the chemistry forum and searched for the original thread. It was gone. Not just locked or hidden, completely deleted. I tried using a cached version of the page. That was gone too. Someone had scrubbed it. I opened a private message window and typed a message to the user who'd posted the challenge. "Why did you delete the thread?" I didn't expect a response, but 10 minutes later, one came through. "Didn't delete it. Mods did. Too much attention." I typed back, "You got what you wanted. He proved the reaction works." "Yeah, he did. And now his life is ruined. That's not on me. He knew the risks. You offered him money. You pushed him to do it. I offered a challenge. He accepted. That's how it works." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. "Who are you?" No response. I waited 5 minutes. Then 10. Nothing. I typed one more message. "Why does it matter so much? Why did you need someone to prove it?" The response came through an hour later. "Because no one else would." That was it. No explanation, no follow-up. Just those 4 words. I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark, trying to make sense of it. Someone had posted a challenge. Mr. Brennan had taken it, and now everything was gone. The school, his career, his reputation, all because someone on the internet had dared him to try. The next day, the local paper ran a front-page story. Teachers banned experiment linked to Cold War-era research. The article went into detail about the Hartman-Kessler reaction, tracing its history back to a lab in East Germany. The original researchers had been trying to develop a synthetic fuel source, but the reaction produced toxic byproducts that couldn't be contained. After the lab accident in 1983, the formula was classified, and the research was shut down. down. The article included a quote from a retired chemist who'd worked on the original project. We knew it was dangerous. That's why we stopped. Anyone attempting this now is either ignorant or arrogant, possibly both. I folded the paper and shoved it in the recycling bin. My phone buzzed. Another group chat message. Someone had found an old interview with Mr. Brennan from 5 years ago, back when he'd won a teaching award. In the interview, he talked about why he loved chemistry. Science is about curiosity, he'd said. It's about asking questions no one else is asking and finding answers no one else has found. That's what I try to teach my students. Don't just accept what you're told. Test it, prove it, push the boundaries. Someone in the group chat had added a crying, laughing emoji. Guess he took his own advice. I left the chat again. That night, I rode my bike past his house one more time. The lights were still off. The driveway was still empty. But this time, there was a for sale sign in the front yard. I stopped at the curb and stared at it. He was gone. Really gone. I pulled out my phone and opened the forum one last time. The thread was still deleted, but I'd saved the URL. I typed it into the search bar, hoping maybe it had been restored. It hadn't, but there was a new thread, posted an hour ago. The title was Hartman-Kessler Synthesis, Full Procedure. I clicked on it. The post was from a brand new account. No username, just a string of random numbers. The text was short. For anyone still interested, proof that it works. Use at your own risk. Below that was a link to a file sharing site. I didn't click it. I just stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. Someone had posted the procedure, the full synthesis. Everything Mr. Brennan had figured out, everything he'd documented in that notebook. It was out there now, for anyone to find. I closed the browser and turned my phone off. The district called a press conference. I watched it on my laptop, the stream buffering every few seconds. The superintendent stood at a podium outside the district office, flanked by 2 lawyers and a woman I didn't recognize. Behind them, a banner read, Lincoln Unified School District. After a thorough investigation conducted in partnership with local and state authorities, we have determined that the chemical incident at Lincoln High School was the result of deliberate and unauthorized experimentation by a staff member, the superintendent said. Brian Brennan, a chemistry teacher employed by this district for 10 years, engaged in reckless conduct that endangered students, staff, and the surrounding community. Someone in the press pool shouted a question. The superintendent held up a hand. Mr. Brennan was attempting to recreate a banned chemical synthesis known as the Hartman-Kessler reaction. Our investigation revealed that he was participating in an online challenge, posted on an unmoderated chemistry forum, in which users were dared to prove the reaction could be successfully completed. The challenge included a monetary incentive. Another reporter shouted, "How much?" $500. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters started yelling over each other. He risked lives for $500? Was he aware of the dangers? How long had this been going on? The superintendent waited for the noise to die down. Mr. Brennan kept detailed records of his attempts, spanning several months. He was aware of the risks. He proceeded anyway. One of the lawyers leaned toward the microphone. The district has filed a civil suit to recover damages related to the decontamination and closure of the school. We are also cooperating with the district attorney's office, which is pursuing criminal charges. What charges? Someone asked. Reckless endangerment, criminal negligence, and willful misconduct. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. My mom came into the room. You okay? No. She sat down next to me. I know this is hard, but he made his choice. He thought he was doing something important. He was chasing internet clout. That's not important. You don't know that. Then what was it? What could possibly justify what he did? I didn't have an answer. The arraignment was scheduled for the following week. I didn't plan to go, but Corey texted me the night before. A bunch of people are going to the courthouse tomorrow. You coming? Why would I go? To see what happens. Don't you want to know? I didn't respond. The next morning, I rode my bike to the courthouse anyway. I told myself I was just curious, that I needed to see it for myself. The parking lot was packed. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed at the sky. A crowd had gathered near the entrance, some holding signs. One read, "Justice for our kids." Another said, "Lock him up." I locked my bike to a rack near the back of the lot and walked toward the building. A reporter tried to stop me, shoving a microphone in my face. "Were you a student at Lincoln High?" I pushed past her without answering. Inside, the hallway was packed. I recognized a few faces from school. Madison Reeves was there, standing near the front with her mom. A couple of teachers stood off to the side, talking in low voices. I didn't see Mr. Brennan. The courtroom doors opened at 9. I followed the crowd inside and found a seat near the back. The room smelled like old wood and floor polish. The judge's bench loomed at the front, empty. A bailiff called for everyone to rise. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She sat down and gestured for everyone else to do the same. Case number 24, CR 8851. The People versus Brian Brennan. A side door opened. 2 officers led Mr. Brennan into the courtroom. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. His hair was longer than I remembered, greasy and unkempt. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. He looked at the crowd as he walked to the defense table. For a second, I thought he saw me, but his gaze moved past without stopping. The judge read the charges: reckless endangerment, criminal negligence, willful misconduct. Each one carried a potential sentence of up to 5 years. Mr. Brennan's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty to all charges." The prosecutor stood next. "Your Honor, given the severity of the defendant's actions and the ongoing impact on the community, the people request that bail be set at $500,000. The defense lawyer objected. "Your Honor, my client has no prior criminal record. He's not a flight risk. We request release on his own recognizance." The judge looked at Mr. Brennan. "Mr. Brennan, do you have anything to say?" He stood slowly, his cuffed hands resting on the table. "Your Honor, I never intended to hurt anyone. I was trying to prove something important, something that could have changed everything." The judge's expression expression didn't change. You endangered dozens of people, including minors. You contaminated a public building. You cost your district millions of dollars. What exactly were you trying to prove? That the reaction works. That it's possible to synthesize fuel from common minerals. If I'd had more time, if I'd been able to stabilize it. You were conducting illegal experiments in a high school laboratory. There is no justification for that. But the science is real. I proved it. If people would just listen, Mr. Brennan, you will have an opportunity to present your case at trial. For now, bail is set at $250,000. You are remanded to custody until such time as bail is posted. The gavel came down. The officers moved toward Mr. Brennan. He turned back toward the crowd, his eyes scanning the room. I almost had it, he said, his voice rising. I was so close. If they'd just let me finish. One of the officers grabbed his arm. He pulled away. You don't understand. This could have changed the world. Renewable fuel from minerals. No more oil, no more coal. Just chemistry. Just science. The other officer took his other arm. They started pulling him toward the side door. I wasn't doing it for the money, he shouted. I was doing it because no one else would. Because everyone's too afraid to try. The door closed behind him. The courtroom was silent. The judge looked at the prosecutor. Anything else? No, Your Honor. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down again. People started filing out. I stayed in my seat, staring at the empty defense table. Corey found me in the hallway. That was intense. I didn't say anything. Did you hear what he said? He actually thinks he was doing something good. Maybe he was. Are you serious? He shut down the whole school. He was trying to prove something no one else could prove. Yeah, and he failed. And now we're all paying for it. I walked away before he could say anything else. Outside, the reporters were swarming. I saw Madison talking to a camera crew, her expression serious. He always seemed unstable, she was saying, like he cared more about being right than about keeping us safe. I kept walking. The news coverage didn't stop. Every outlet ran the story. Teacher arrested for reckless experiment. Online dare leads to school closure. Chemistry teacher faces years in prison. The comment sections were worse than before. People were calling him a lunatic, a narcissist, a danger to society. Someone started a petition demanding he never be allowed near a school again. It got 10,000 signatures in 2 days. But there were other comments, too. Buried under the outrage, a few people were asking questions. Was the reaction actually successful? If it works, why isn't anyone talking about the science? Maybe he was onto something. I clicked on one of those threads. The replies were immediate and vicious. He poisoned a school. Who cares if it worked? This isn't about science, it's about ego. People like him are why we have regulations. I closed the browser. The trial date was set for 3 months out. In the meantime, the school remained closed. The district announced that students would finish the year remotely. The science wing would be demolished and rebuilt, but that wouldn't start until the lawsuit was resolved. Parents were furious. Some pulled their kids out of the district entirely. Others organized protests demanding the district fire everyone involved in hiring Mr. Brennan. I stopped going online. I stopped checking the group chat. I just focused on my assignments and tried not to think about any of it. But then the documentary crew showed up. They reached out to students through social media, offering to pay for interviews. A lot of people said yes. I wasn't one of them. Corey was, though. He texted me after his interview. They asked me what I thought of Mr. Brennan. I told them he was a good teacher until he wasn't. What's that supposed to mean? I don't know. It's what they wanted to hear. The documentary aired 2 months later. I didn't watch it, but my mom did. She came into my room afterward, her face tight. They made him look like a villain. Isn't he? I don't know. Maybe. But they didn't talk about why he did it. They just focused on the damage. What else is there to talk about? She didn't answer. The day before the trial started, someone leaked the full investigation report. It was 200 pages long, most of it technical analysis of the contamination and the chemical compounds found in the lab. But buried in the middle was a section about Mr. Brennan's online activity. He'd been active on the forum for over a year, not just in the challenge thread, but in dozens of others. He'd been asking questions, sharing research, debating with other users about the feasibility of banned reactions. One exchange stood out. Someone had asked him why he was so obsessed with the Hartman-Kessler reaction. His response was simple. Because if it works, it changes everything. Energy independence. No more fossil fuels. No more wars over oil. Just chemistry. Someone had replied, and if it doesn't work? Then at least we tried. I read that line 3 times. The trial lasted a week. I didn't go, but I followed the coverage. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. They brought in experts who testified about the dangers of the reaction, the contamination levels in the school, the cost of the cleanup. They showed photos of the lab, the scorch marks on the walls, the sealed containers of toxic residue. The defense tried to argue that Mr. Brennan had taken precautions, that he'd believed the reaction was under control. They brought in their own experts who testified that the contamination was less severe than the prosecution claimed. It didn't matter. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The judge gave Mr. Brennan a chance to speak before she handed down the sentence. He stood at the defense table, his hands folded in front of him. He looked smaller than I remembered, older. Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I know I put people at risk. I know I caused harm, but I want you to understand why I did it. The judge nodded. Go ahead. I've been teaching chemistry for 10 years. I've seen hundreds of students come through my classroom, and every year I see the same thing. They're curious. They want to know how the world works. They want to push boundaries and discover new things. But then they grow up, and they stop asking questions. They stop trying. They accept the world as it is. He paused. I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to stop trying. So when I saw that challenge, when I saw that someone was daring people to prove the impossible, I couldn't walk away. I had to know if it was real. I had to know if I could do it. And did you? The judge asked. Yes. For 90 seconds I had a stable reaction. I proved it was possible. And then what happened? It destabilized. I couldn't control it, and everything Everything fell apart. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Brennan, science is built on curiosity, but it's also built on responsibility. You had a duty to your students, to your school, to your community. You violated that duty, and now people are suffering because of your choices. I know. Do you regret it? He hesitated. I regret the harm I caused, but I don't regret trying. The judge sat back. Then I don't think you've learned anything. She sentenced him to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. He was also ordered to pay restitution to the district, though everyone knew he'd never be able to afford it. As the officers led him out of the courtroom, he looked back one more time. His eyes were red, but he wasn't crying. He just looked tired. The school reopened 6 months later. The science wing had been completely rebuilt. The old lab torn down and replaced with a new one. Everything was clean and sterile and safe. I walked past it on the first day back. The door was propped open and I could see inside. New tables, new equipment, new posters on the walls. A new teacher stood at the front, writing something on the whiteboard. It didn't feel like the same place. I kept walking. I graduated that spring. Most of my class had already transferred out, scattered across 3 different schools while the district figured out what to do with the building. By the time diplomas were handed out, Lincoln High existed only on paper. The demolition started in July. I rode past on my way to work one morning and saw the excavators lined up outside the fence. By evening, the science wing was gone. Just rubble and dust and men in hazmat suits marking off sections with yellow tape. They didn't rebuild. The district sold the land to a developer who promised to turn it into mixed-use housing, but the soil tests came back too contaminated. The project stalled. The lot sat empty, ringed by chain link and warning signs that read, "Hazardous Material Zone, no trespassing." I drove past it sometimes on my way home from community college. The fence was still there, the signs faded but readable. Weeds had started growing through the cracks in the old parking lot. Someone had spray-painted "RIP Lincoln High" on the side of the fence. Someone else had added, "Brennan was right" underneath. I never stopped to read the rest. Mr. Brennan got out after 18 months on good behavior. I heard he moved to another state somewhere out west. Someone said he was working at a hardware store. Someone else said he'd started a YouTube channel about chemistry, but it got taken down after a week. I looked him up once, late at night when I couldn't sleep. His name pulled up dozens of articles, all with the same photos, the same headlines. Teacher's reckless experiment. School closure linked to online dare. Banned reaction ends career. None of them mentioned the 90 seconds when it worked. I closed the browser and didn't search again. The forum disappeared entirely. The site went offline. The domain purchased by someone who turned it into a generic landing page. The challenge thread, the leaked screenshots, the procedure someone had posted, all of it gone. Scrubbed clean like it had never existed. But I still remembered the last thing he'd said in court. "I don't regret trying." I thought about that a lot. About the difference between trying and succeeding. About the cost of proving you're right when no one asked you to prove anything at all. He used to say curiosity drives discovery. He was right about that. But he never finished the sentence. Curiosity drives discovery, and discovery drives consequences. And consequences don't care what you were trying to prove. I drove past the empty lot one last time before I transferred to a university 2 hours north. The fence was still up, the warning signs still visible from the road. I slowed down as I passed, looking for something I couldn't name. Some sign that it had mattered, that any of it had meant something. There was nothing, just dirt and weeds and a chain-link barrier keeping people away from ground that would never be safe again. I kept driving. At school, no one talked about Lincoln High anymore. When people asked where I'd gone before, I just said the name of the district and changed the subject. Most of them didn't push. The ones who recognized the name from the news would get quiet for a second, then move on. I took chemistry my first semester. Different professor, different lab, different rules. Everything was monitored, every experiment pre-approved, every chemical logged and tracked. The professor spent the first day going over safety protocols, emphasizing that deviation from procedure would result in immediate removal from the course. I thought about Mr. Brennan standing at the front of his classroom, setting magnesium strips on fire just to watch our faces light up. The way he'd laugh when the smoke alarm went off. The way he'd say, "That's chemistry," like it explained everything. I dropped the class after 2 weeks. My roommate asked why. I told him I didn't like the professor. He didn't ask again. I saw the documentary by accident, flipping through channels at 2 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. My face appeared on screen for maybe 3 seconds. Part of a crowd shot from the parking lot that first day. I looked younger than I remembered, scared. The narrator's voice played over the footage. Students fled the building as toxic smoke filled the hallways, unaware that their teacher's obsession with an online challenge had put their lives at risk. I turned it off. The settlement came through my senior year. The district's insurance company had fought it for 3 years, but they finally agreed to pay out to everyone who'd been in the building that day. $2,000 per student. Compensation for emotional distress and educational disruption. I used mine to pay off part of my student loans. It felt wrong somehow, profiting from the whole thing, but I cashed the check anyway. Corey texted me when he got his blood money, Lowell. I didn't respond. I graduated and moved to a city 4 hours away, got a job doing data entry for an insurance company. Boring work, but it paid the bills. I didn't think about chemistry. I didn't think about Mr. Brennan. I didn't think about any of it. Until I saw the obituary. It was buried in the back of the newspaper, just a few lines. Brian Brennan, 47, formerly of Lincoln, survived by a sister in Oregon. No services planned. No cause of death listed. No mention of what he'd done. Just a name and an age and the word formerly, like he'd been erased erased from the place he'd spent 10 years of his life. I folded the paper and set it on the table. My coffee had gone cold. I thought about going to Oregon, finding the sister, asking her what had happened. I thought about going to Oregon, finding the sister, asking her what had happened. I didn't. Instead, I went back to work. I filed claims and processed paperwork and pretended the obituary didn't exist. But at night, lying in bed, I kept seeing that beaker glowing green in the dark lab. Kept hearing his voice shouting at me to get out. Kept thinking about 90 seconds of stability before everything collapsed. A week later, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just a link and a single sentence. Thought you might want to see this. I almost deleted it. Spam, probably, or a virus. But something made me click. The link opened to a video hosting site I'd never heard of. The video was titled Hartman-Kessler Synthesis, Complete Documentation. The thumbnail showed a lab setup, not a school lab, somewhere else. Professional equipment, proper ventilation, safety gear. I clicked play. The video was 20 minutes long. No narration, just footage of someone performing the reaction step by step. The camera never showed their face, just their gloved hands measuring compounds, mixing solutions, adjusting temperatures. The beaker started glowing around the 10-minute mark. Bright green, just like I remembered. The timer in the corner of the screen started counting. 30 seconds, 60, 90. The glow held steady. 120 seconds, 150. The reaction stayed stable for 3 full minutes before the person performing it added something else. A clear liquid from an unmarked bottle. The glow faded gradually, controlled. The mixture turned pale yellow, then clear. The video ended with a shot of the final product. A small vial of transparent liquid, labeled with a date and a set of numbers I didn't understand. Below the video, a single comment from the uploader. He was right. It works. The stabilization agent was the missing piece. Took me 2 years to figure it out, but it works. I read it 3 times. Then I scrolled down. No other comments. No views counter. No way to tell who had uploaded it or when. I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark. He'd been right. The reaction worked. Someone had finished what he started, and no one would ever know. I thought about sending the link to someone. The district, the news, the people who'd called him reckless and stupid and dangerous. But what would that prove? That he'd been on to something? That the 90 seconds mattered? It wouldn't bring the school back. It wouldn't give him his career back. It wouldn't undo the 3 years he'd spent in prison or whatever had happened after that led to an obituary with no services planned. I deleted the email. The next morning, I went to work. I processed claims. I filed paperwork. I went home and made dinner and watched television and went to bed. But sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I thought about that video, about the 3 minutes of stable reaction, about the person who'd spent 2 years figuring out what Mr. Brennan couldn't finish in the few weeks he'd had before everything fell apart. I wondered if he would have been proud, or if he would have been angry that someone else had solved it, or if he would have just been relieved that he'd been right all along. I never found out who uploaded the video. The link stopped working a month later, the page replaced with an error message. I tried searching for it, but nothing came up. It was gone, just like everything else. I still drive past the empty lot sometimes when I visit my mom. The fence is still there. The warning signs faded, but readable. The weeds have gotten taller. Someone tore down the graffiti, but you can still see the outline of the letters if you know where to look. I don't stop anymore, I just drive past and keep going. Because in the end, it doesn't matter if he was right. What matters is what it cost. The school that doesn't exist anymore, the students who scattered, the career that ended in an orange jumpsuit, and a courtroom full of people who wanted him punished for daring to try. I think about that sometimes. About the line between curiosity and obsession. About the moment when proving something stops being about discovery and starts being about ego. He crossed that line. Maybe he didn't mean to. Maybe he thought he was still on the right side of it, right up until the alarms started blaring and the green smoke filled the hallway. But intent doesn't matter when the building has to be demolished. I got a message from Corey last year. He'd moved to the East Coast working in finance. He asked if I remembered Mr. Brennan. I told him I did. He said he'd been thinking about that day a lot lately. About how we'd all thought it was just a drill at first. How we'd laughed in the gym while hazmat teams sealed off the science wing. Do you ever wonder if he regretted it? Corey asked. I thought about the courtroom. About the way Mr. Brennan had stood there and said he didn't regret trying. No, I told him, I don't think he did. Corey didn't respond for a while. Then he sent one more message. That's the saddest part. I didn't argue. My mom sold the house last month. She's moving to Arizona, somewhere warm where she doesn't have to think about winters or the past or the empty lot on the edge of town that used to be a school. I helped her pack. In one of the boxes, I found my old yearbook from junior year. The last one Lincoln High ever printed. I flipped through it. There was a photo of Mr. Brennan in the faculty section, standing in front of a periodic table with his arms crossed, smiling. The caption underneath read, Mr. Brennan, making chemistry fun since 2009. I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the book and put it back in the box. My mom asked if I wanted to keep it. I told her no. Some things are better left packed away. I don't know what happened to the person who uploaded that video. I don't know if they ever published their findings, or if they kept it to themselves. I don't know if the reaction actually works the way they claimed, or if it was just another dead end. And I don't want to know. Because knowing won't change anything. It won't bring back the school. It won't undo the damage. It won't make any of it worth it. Mr. Brennan used to say that science is about asking questions, but he never talked about what happens when you get the answer and realize it doesn't matter anymore. I drive past the lot one last time before I leave town. The fence is gone now. The warning signs have been removed. The developer finally got approval to start building, though I heard the units are going to be expensive because of all the extra safety measures they had to put in place. The ground is still contaminated. It always will be, but they're building on it anyway. I guess that's progress. I keep driving until the town disappears in my rearview mirror. I don't look back.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.